Alright, so let's take a look at our factoring map one more time. So remember, we have a polynomial. First steps are always to check to see if anything needs to be combined, see that it's in standard form, and then check to make sure there's not a greatest common factor that needs to be removed. If none of those things need to be done, or if they do and you've done them, then what happens is you will be left with either a binomial, a trinomial, or a four-term polynomial. So now we've already covered special cases of binomials. We've covered difference of squares, we've covered difference of cubes, and we've covered sum of cubes. So that leaves us with trinomials. So what we're going to talk about today is the factor test. What this test does is it allows us to know whether or not a trinomial can be factored. Therefore, that'll save us some time. If it can't be factored, then we're not just wasting time trying to find out how it can or if it can. So this way, we'll do the factor test, we'll know whether it can be factored or not, and then we'll move on to how to actually factor those using backwards FOIL. So today, remember, our focus is going to be on the factor test. Okay. So those are your notes that you will have for today. So first off, we use this with standard form trinomials, and standard form is written as the coefficient and the x squared plus the coefficient in x plus c. Okay, so this a, b, and c are all numbers, and then the x squared and the x go in there. Now that may not be an x, it may be a t or a p or whatever the variable is. Okay, but remember what's going to be in standard form. Alphabetical order, highest exponent down. Okay, and what it does is it used to determine if a trinomial can be factored further, or if it's not, remember that we call it prime. Okay, so if it can't be factored, we call it prime and we move on. There's nothing else we can do. All right, so here's the formula. It's really simple. It's b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you are going to substitute the a, b, and c values from your trinomial into the formula. Okay, and that's where the standard form comes into play. A, b, and c, that's where these come from. If the answer is a square, you are not done, and you will need to factor further. Okay, if it's a square, you're going to have to factor. If the answer is not a square, you are done. Okay, and that means that it is prime. All right, so keep that in mind. So here's a couple of examples. So first off, we check to make sure it's in standard form, and it is. So that means that a here, the value of a is 6, the value of b is negative 19, and the value of c is 15. So these are the values that we're going to plug into our formula. So here's the formula, and we're going to plug in b, so negative 19 squared, minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 6, and c, which is 15. Okay, and honestly, all we have to do on this is plug it straight into our calculator, and it's going to look just like this. Okay, so we're going to have parentheses, negative 19, close parentheses, square it, all right, minus 4 multiplied by 6 multiplied by 15, and then press enter. And we come up with 1. Okay, now 1, to find out if it's a square or not, what you want to do is do the square root. So we're going to do the square root of 1. So second square button is square root, type in 1, and we find out that we get a whole number. If we do the square of something and we get a whole number, then it is a perfect square. Okay, so the square root of 1 is 1. That means this is a square, and it can be factored further. Okay, so this means we are not done, and we would, at this point in our factoring, we would go ahead and start the process of how to factor that trinomial, all right, which is what we're going to learn in the next video. Now, we're going to look at this example down here. So first off, a, the value in front of this y squared is 16. B, the value in front of the y is 17. And here, the value of c is negative 14. Don't forget about these minus signs. They are the negative. So again, here's our formula, and we're going to plug those values in. So b squared, that's 17 squared, minus 4, and a, we plug in 16, and in place of c, we plug in negative 14. And again, we're going to plug this straight into our calculator. So we're going to do parentheses 17 squared minus 4 multiplied by 16 multiplied by negative 14. Okay, when we're dealing with negatives here, remember it is so important to use those parentheses. All right, press enter, and you get 11 1185. Okay, so now we're going to do the square root of 1185. And if you're struggling to remember where those buttons are on your calculator, just let me know. Or if you're working from home and you're using a different calculator that doesn't have it, you can use Desmos.com. And remember, that's going to be an online calculator that'll do this for you, okay? So square root of 1185. Notice we do not get a whole number here. So that means, so we got something like 34.423. This is not a square, which means it cannot be factored further, okay? And in that case, it means that it is prime, all right? That means we don't have to go any further on this. We have factored it as far as we can factor it, and we're done. We're not going to try to factor any further. So prime is what we would call this, all right? So keep that in mind. This is the process that we're going to start with every time we come to a trinomial. We're going to check to make sure it can be factored, and if it can, awesome. We'll go ahead and factor it, and if not, we'll call it prime, and we'll move on. We'll be done. All right, so if you have any questions, make sure you ask them, and then we're going to go ahead and start here in a little bit on our backwards FOIL, which is how we would be doing how we would factor a trinomial.